The father is a gardener. He works 3 days a week. He makes $75 every day he works. The mother lost her job in manufacturing. It took one paycheck to move them from their apartment onto the street. And that's true for a lot of families in our community. At some point, and I do worry about this, like I think, is it all of a sudden that the country splits in half? Are we creating literally two Americas?
Silicon Valley has the brain power and has the risky personality to do some really innovative things when it comes to poverty. And I even think there's a will to do this, but I think that there is a lack of awareness and hopefully a growing awareness, because I do think that there's been brilliance out of that region that has changed the world. So wouldn't it be something if that area could also be the one that sparks the brilliance that starts to solve this really major problem?
Let's hope so, because inequality in America is now at the greatest level in modern history and shows no signs of abating. And paradoxically, this week, it got worse. The stock market reached new levels, making the rich richer and the press euphoric.
And the gavel goes down on an historic day on Wall Street.
Roaring stock market. The S&P just hits another record intraday high.
Dow's above 14.8. The Nasdaq rose about 60 points.
No one stopped to point out that when the market goes up, it can mean companies have fired workers in order to increase investor profits. Sure enough, the latest figures show employment has barely risen, and more rank-and-file Americans have gone missing from the job market altogether. The Commerce Department reports that personal income fell 3.6% in January. That's the sharpest one-month dive in 20 years. It sure seems like the roaring 20s all over again. People at the top living it up, while those down below lose their livelihood. Which brings us to our nation's capital, rich in alabaster symbols of representative government, yet shamelessly cynical in writing laws and bending rules to favor the 1%. And that includes the tax code. So Monday, when you send in your tax returns, think about this. Corporate profits are at record highs, but have those companies invested that money in new jobs? No. Did they at least give their workers a bump in pay? Hardly. Surely they shelled out a little more in taxes to help refurbish the social structure, the highways, bridges, schools, libraries, and parks where they do business. Yes, again. Corporations are sitting on $1.7 trillion of cash. Look at this report just published by PIRG, the Public Interest Research Group, on how average citizens and small businesses have to make up the $90 billion giant companies save by shifting profits to offshore tax havens. Among the 83 publicly traded corporations named, Pfizer, which for the past 5 years reported no taxable income in the U.S., even as it made 40% of its sales here. Microsoft, which avoided $4.5 billion in taxes over 3 years by shifting its income to Puerto Rico. Citigroup, which maintains 20 subsidiaries in tax havens and has over $42.5 billion sitting offshore. Taxes collected here at home, zero. It's not only corporations stashing their swag abroad. The Center for Public Integrity in Washington and its international consortium of investigative journalists recently got their hands on 2.5 billion files from offshore bank accounts and shell companies set up around the world by the wealthy. Among those documents are the names of 4,000 Americans who hid their money in secret tax havens. Here's how they do it.
You can easily set up a secret company using one of hundreds of offshore agents. Let's look at the British Virgin Islands, home to 500,000 offshore companies. That's about 40% of the offshore companies on the planet. You can buy a ready-made shelf company or create your own secret company from scratch in about 3 days for just over $1,000. You may be asked to produce documents to establish your identity, and they might check your name in a database to see if you're a terrorist. But don't worry, while the system may catch the big fish, it still lets scores of fraudsters and criminals slip through the net.
So it shouldn't surprise us to learn that the United States collects less in taxes as a share of its economy than all but two other industrialized countries. Only Chile and Mexico collect less. Chile and Mexico. Right now, a powerful group of CEOs, multimillionaires, and billionaires are calling on Congress to fix the debt, and their neighbors in both parties are glad to oblige. Okay, but why not fix the debt by raising more taxes from those who can afford to pay? Close the loopholes, shut down the tax havens, cancel the Mitt Romney clause Congress enacted allowing big winners to pay a tax rate far less than their chauffeurs, nannies, and gardeners. Instead, as we speak, our political class in Washington is attempting to fix the debt by sequestration. That's Washington doublespeak for bleeding services for veterans and the elderly, the sick and poor, for kids in Head Start. Marching in lockstep beneath a banner that now stands for Guardians of Privilege, GOP, Republicans refuse to raise revenues, while Democrats have a president whose new budget contains gimmicks that could lead to cuts in Social Security. Social Security, the one universal safety net, and a modest one at that, and yet the main source of purchasing power for millions of aging Americans. This from a Democrat, the heir of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who pulled us to our feet when the Great Depression had America on its knees.
This Social Security measure gives at least some protection to 50 million of our citizens who will reap direct benefits through unemployment compensation, through old age pensions, and through increased services for the protection of children and the prevention of ill health.
But those were the days when our political system rallied to the defense of everyday Americans. Now, a petty, narcissistic, pridefully ignorant politics has come to dominate and paralyze our government, while millions of people keep falling through the gaping hole that has turned us into the United States of inequality. Warren Buffett, the savviest capitalist of them all, may have written this era's epitaph. If there was a class war, my class won.